Welcome to everyone to our most extraordinary ending event for the Green Mountain Book Festival. And at the end here today, we have two very, very notable poets. We're going to start out with Stephen Cramer, and then we will be ending our festivities with Shanta Lee. Stephen Cramer's first book of poems, Shiva's Drum, was selected for the National Poetry Series and published by University of Illinois Press. Bone Music, his sixth, won the Louise Bogan Award, and his most recent, The Disintegration Loops, which was a finalist for the Vermont Book Award. He is the editor of Turn It Up, Music and Poetry from Jazz to Hip Hop. Cramer's work has appeared in journals such as the American Poetry Review, African American Review, the Yale Review, and Harvard Review. An assistant poetry editor at Green Mountains Review, he teaches writing and literature at the University of Vermont, where he was my daughter's favorite teacher. And he lives with his wife and daughter in Burlington. Welcome, Stephen.
All right, thank you so much for that intro, and thank you guys for being here. It's been an awesome weekend. This is the inaugural Green Mountain Book Festival, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. The panels, the individual readings, it's just been such an enriching weekend, and I'm so just grateful to be among people, and sharing these things with each other. It feels good. So I think what I want to do is I'm going to read a few poems from the books. Then I want to do a few new poems, which makes me really nervous. So we'll do that and then end with some others from the books. All right. So this first one, I used to live in New York City, and one day I saw a man playing an empty keg as a drum and just like annihilating the thing on Broadway. And so that's what this is all about. It's called What We Do. A metallic detonation arcs over Broadway's gulf, and the aluminum contorts to contain the continuous syncopation wrecked into its side. With 2 feet of pipe, a man's beating a keg till it turns useless for anything else but to carry his liquid rhythms. He's drumming a rim full of dents, angled facets that pull to themselves all the sun they can bear before tossing a tremolo of light off the bricks behind. Look around. Whatever this sound is that ricochets the streets is contagious. Less drums than a seasonal quickening that everything is so busy keeping up with. New desire mixing up the thick torpor of the past months. At my feet, 2 pigeons struggle over any spare piece of garbage to entice a female. They fumble in this patch of spilled popcorn, gurgling and churring in figure 8s, inflating the sheen of their necks over their turf. And even when she dodges away, they just keep flashing iridescence for no one. Noontime, the drummer is checking the metal where he's reflected in more than one place, tucking a stray curl behind his ear. But just so you don't forget whose block this is, when a woman goes by, he's sent demonic, like he knows this commotion is for keeps. And he's thrown into a shimmy of the hips which he rises out of just in time to fit the mechanical stumble of a far-off jackhammer into his running rhythm. These sounds the music wants to encompass, make its own. So in the end, you can't tell if he's playing the drums or if they're playing him. Because when you're itching to finish with your wrists, the rumble that begins in your gut, this is what you do. You're ready to bang on anything for love. You'll break your hands to get that rhythm out. Thanks. This one, so this one, let's see, in the 1970s, 1977, spacecraft Voyager went up into space with that metal disc full of sounds from from Earth. So you've got lots of songs on there. Johnny B. Good is on there. This song also is on there. It's Dark Was the Night, Cold Was the Ground by, what's up? Are you serious? About this very song? Oh my gosh. But how new is the book? Last week? Okay, all right. All right. So Blind Willie Johnson is the guy who wrote this, who played this song. And if you haven't heard the song, you have to. So Cold Was the Ground. And then we can compare, you know what I mean? Like see. A moan dragged across gravel, a guitar's metallic complaint and shimmy. These sounds rattle the zodiac, wail to the mute eruption and flare of a collapsing star. Dark was the night, cold was the ground by Blind Willie Johnson. 3 minutes and 15 seconds of bruised spiritual is touring the cosmos alongside the Brandenburg Concerto and Johnny B. Good on the spacecraft Voyager. The music flanked by a slew of natural sounds, surf and thunder, crickets, a kiss, a heartbeat, an oral primer to planet Earth. The world is phonic. What is matter? Blueberry, backhoe, the back of your hand, but the shreds of that primeval sound when the universe detonated from the ghost of a pebble. On this journey, any one man's history is dwarfed by boundless gulf and pulsar. Voyager, long past Pluto, is 100,000 years from the next system. But here you are on Earth, and so it matters that when Johnson was 7, his stepmother, aiming for his father, cast lie into his face, the price for his father's infidelity. Blinded, he was resigned to a street corner. The dull rattle of tips pooling in a cup, a woman passing to another running catalog of bouquets. Husk of sweat at first, then salt, then almonds. Her body's continuous assertions grown hyperbolic. He could smell moods, their delicate swerves, evident as each nuance of skins pit and swell. He could smell the fur before it brushed his arm, before the woman backed away in a clatter of heels. And years later, he could smell the stench of soaked char in the ruined pit of his house. Turned away from the hospital after the fire that gutted his roof, he returned to a rain-soaked bed of newspaper and soot, and pneumonia killed him in the ashes, beneath a ceiling not of wood or of plaster, but of stars. What are blues with no human to hear? What's a kiss or a heartbeat to that grand sweep of interplanetary ash, but molecules bumping molecules? Stranger, unimaginable intergalactic pilgrim who has never even heard of a tongue. If you have found this note curled in our $1 million can, hear the absurdity of our glory and our pain. Transmute it into we know not what, space dust, star kindling. Restore us back to sound. All right, so listen, in the 1950s, in Russia, hipsters had a hard time getting a hold of like the music that was budding in America. So they had a hard time getting getting a hold of early rock or the jazz that's going on in the 1950s. And so what they did, they got creative. They would dumpster dive behind hospitals and collect x-rays, because they found that if they had a single record, they could transfer the grooves into the x-rays and make records out of the x-rays. So the cover of this book is a skull. This is a record. Like, this is one of the records that the Russians made to bootleg American music. So this is the title poem of the book, called Bone Music. Inky aquariums, ghost windows. With vinyl scarce, we couldn't even bootleg songs until some back alley genius first scavenged dumpsters behind hospitals for this unlikely savior. The eddy and churn of snow, gravel under boot, and then among syringes and bandages, beneath battalions of rubber gloves and masks, the stashed blessing of discarded x-rays. To bring them home, these slides where bodies are reduced to sooty maps, cobalt fog inscribed with knots of calcium, collagen streaks. We scissored each sheet into a circle and used the blooming end of a cigarette to burn a center hole. Then we pressed the contraband of Ellington, Armstrong, Basie onto each until a trumpet's ragged helix shimmied on a broken femur, the cloud of a skull with its zipper of teeth, the stacked totem of a spine. When the state caught wind, slides grew scarce as Siberian mangoes, and we scrounged for our own CAT scans, ultrasounds. Aunt Sophia's MRI is a Coleman Hawkins, notes escaping like smoke from the cage of her ribs. Bring on winter. Bring on disease and rot and fracture. Because the more broken we become, the more music we can spin out of our bones. All right, so when I went to school, I was visiting another school. It was not at our school, Mike, because this would not have happened at Minnesink Valley. Visiting another school, and there's words scribbled across walls and things like that. A lot of graffiti. Anyway, this is about somebody who spray painted or tried to spray paint the word Satan across their school walls, and they failed. So this is called Satin. True story. I hope he makes it through. Whoever, on a dare, spray painted on the school shamelessly as one ever could the word Satin. Between an anarchy sign and a crooked swastika, this is no devil, but just might be the meanest glossy fabric in town. What hope do you have when you're wrong at your most passionate? Sweet screw up, I send you all the hope in the world. All right, so here's the scary part. So most of these things that I'm reading are narrative poems that tell a story of some sort. What I'm working on now is not narrative poems. So unlike what I've been doing for most of my life here, so I'm going to read a few from this manuscript. These are called lyric poems, and that just means shorter poems from a single speaker, usually addressing some sort of emotion. So this is called Relief. Every day, the atoms of my body are a little closer to being atoms of something that is not my body. Soon enough, they'll learn to sing from something other than my throat. So today, my prayer goes like this. Please, manifold tribe that makes me up, help me while you can to relieve my mouth of this song. This one's called Making Way. After so many millions of years of not being, you'd think I'd be innately qualified, a professional in oblivion. But no, here I am again practicing how not to be. I close my eyes, try to feel my heart not as a heart but as a stone, my tongue as a slug in the grass. I try to breathe as though each gulp of air was another root pressing its way through my chest, or an errant drop of water taken in again by the mother cloud. I used to think life was a blink, but really it's the opposite. The flash of eyes opening in the night, and the rest, not sleep, not dream, but dispersal, permeation, or better, penetration, as the earth spreads its soils, clenching and pulling to make way for my bones. Oh, I don't know. All right. Yeah, okay, yeah. This one's called Choice. Tonight, it looks like the stars have had a few. Orion is skinny dipping in puddles, choreographing sweet dance moves with a street lamp. Actually, everything is clearly intoxicated, from the scent of rain laced with pine to the grass tilting beneath our feet. Let's face it, As of the most recent assessment, the day seems to have had a deficit of awesome. I mean, even if the task we've been given is to make a house out of a hurricane, to make walls with the whirlwind, to board by board create the floor we walk on, what choice do we have but to drive lightless all night and honk at all the moths? It's far past time to walk a shattered sidewalk that hasn't already memorized my stride. Time to speak with an eloquence that tends to slur into grunt and groan. Time to all night long hook elbows with awe. All right, this one is called Lipstick. Back to narrative. The knot of 6 or 7 boys dashed back and forth against a strobe of sun through pines. Lipstick slurred across their chins and cheeks. I stumbled, a few delirious streaks cross-hatching my brow, across the stippled field of corn plowed under. We were far past the ditch of poison ivy and jewel weed, far from the closest house where, an hour before, we'd raided one of our mother's dresser tops for Lipstick's barrage of colors. Tropic sunrise, chilly burn, wine dark plum, their names as lavish as their hues. Then we ran off to the woods where we could rub those shades onto the ends of our swords. Sticks, really, a slew of bent branches that we'd ripped from live trees so that rot wouldn't sneak up on us mid-combat. Then it was every shirtless boy for himself, each waving his sword, some with the precision of a compass, others as wild as a blind dervish. We lunged toward each other, backed away, lunged and retreated. As we lunged toward each other, backed away, lunged and retreated, someone across the field might have mistaken our moves for an elaborate dance. Glide and stretch, turn and counter-turn. Until finally, the sky dizzy above us, we sprawled on the matted gold of grass, and all of us slashed and branded with sham blood. After the heat of battle, we'd check ourselves, showing off with pride a swath of unscathed flesh, and I got you there, but yeah, I got you there. Then we'd help each other rub off the scars, smearing the lipstick into the various tones of our skin. Not one of us had yet received an errant blur of lipstick from another's mouth. Though we might have bragged differently, it'd be years until our first real kisses, and a few weeks after that before our first breakups. But here we were, practicing for all the wounds we'd earn in the coming years. Fuck. But here we were, practicing for all the wounds we'd earn in the coming years. And here we were, all of us so eager to go out and receive them. So I want to hold on to those days just before the onslaught of all those more lasting scars, when we lay spread-eagled next to each other, sweaty with our own hurt and healing, when we still couldn't tell wounds from kisses. All right, so I'm going to do one more here, and then Shanta, which I'm looking forward to. This one is called For Brendan. Brendan is my nephew who was adopted. My sister and her husband adopted him. But it doesn't start off with Brendan. It starts off with a neighbor, an upstairs neighbor who I had when I used to live in Harlem. So, for Brendan. I knew her first as the rhythm of her cane on the floor above. I knew her first as the rhythm of her cane on the floor above. Faint lexicon of cracks and teeps and taps. All right, this just rattled me, this with the phone there. Sorry about that. I knew her first as the rhythm of her cane on the floor above. Faint lexicon of creaks and taps that let me invent her cramped apartment. The certain television, the recliner, and the withered ottoman she sidesteps to the kitchen. But it's my neighbor's laugh that turns the ceiling's thick plaster to rice paper. The same laugh that, outside, calls to her heels her scooter and trike-propelled tribe of neighborhood children. This extended family she's adopted because polio has kept her from kids of her own. Outside the grocery, she asks about my sister's second child. 2 years of agencies, I answer, and still paperwork will keep him from her arms for weeks. Texas, a transitional family, and another imagined room. Portable crib, plush mobile dangling from the respirator, and a rainbowed circus whirls to his charted pulse. The sweet anxieties of early parenthood. 2 decades of marriage, it's 1975, and my mother starts the new year with her own troubled pregnancy, the early delivery that may not be early enough. First hours on the other side of labor, and a clergy absolves the failing child. Prayers, fogging the surface of a plastic womb, blur his gestures to vague curves. Then, once the child's prepared for heaven, the doctors do their best to delay his trip, and he's wheeled away to the last of 4 transfusions, the one that finally sustains him. Those anonymous donors, their blood bagged and chilled to come alive again in me. I've never wondered until today what their names might be. What community of fluids cruises my veins? Little one, all this to tell you something simple. We're of one blood. The grocery's lights fizzle and fade. My neighbor's dark skin deepens to twilight. I'm walking her home, a bag in each hand, and she's describing the milk, eggs, flour, and the buttered cornbread they'll become. When I pull out the photo of a child curled almost into a fist-sized ball, she props her cane against her door. "Ain't that something," she says, and laughs one of her 2-syllabled laughs that truly means, "Ain't that something?" Then she pauses, looks at the ground. "And honey," she says, talking now almost to herself, "if you knelt each time a miracle passed your eyes, you'd never get off your knees." Thanks for having me.
Wow, right? Wow. One more time for Stephen. Ooh, I got to catch my breath after that. That was astonishing. Shanta Lee is a photographer and writer whose work has been widely featured. She's the author of GHETTOCLAUSTROPHOBIA, Dreamin' of Mama While Trying to Speak Woman in Woke Tongues. Winner of the 2020 Diode Press Full-Length Book Prize with an honorable mention from the Sheila Margaret Moulton Prize. She is a recipient of this year's Vermont Book Award for Poetry. She was the 2020 recipient of the Arthur Williams Award for Meritorious Service to the Arts, as well as the 2020 gubernatorial appointee to the Vermont Humanities Council Board of Directors. Shanta Lee has an MFA in Creative Nonfiction and Poetry from the Vermont College of Fine Arts, an MFA from the University of Hartford, an undergraduate degree in Women, Gender, and Sexuality from Trinity College. Her forthcoming book, Black Metamorphosis, is an illustrated poetry collection that has been widely acclaimed, and her current multimedia exhibition, Dark Goddess, is on view from now until December 9th at the Fleming Museum. Shanta.
Hard to follow. Love that. So I'm going to read from GHETTOCLAUSTROPHOBIA and some from Black Metal. All right. I don't know where it is I heard this because I know nothing about old clocks, but there's something about witness marks. And so if you go into an old clock, which I've never done, and it gives markings basically for what was done to it before. And so I was kind of struck by that imagery and horology, etc. So that kind of, there are a couple of poems this instructed. This is one of them. Dreamin' of Mama. Here, Mama be like, I'm gonna carry your bag, sharing the burden she's put in it. Here, we argue like sisters, screaming the trauma that created us. We show up lulled into forgetting, starting where we ended to do it all again. If I arrive awake, she shows me how to read the witness marks, saying, our bodies, the clocks, our mamas multiplied by greatness. They be horologists. Mother who brung ya 3. Some say mama's 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 mama, some kind of medicine woman. Or was it she made balm? She made for estranged souls. A tangled tale on mama's side about how all the men lost, eaten, how all the men got no names. Well, few. Mama's grandfather went by Singh. Mama's great-grandfather, a full name. The women, they be the kind refusing knowing, unknowing, as in they got names, as in follow the trail of chicken feet, follow all the ways we know seeing with our eyes closed. One of Papa's great-grandmamas, a Cherokee woman. Papa's great-grandpapa, a white man. Both them, no name. Names get lost like that, but follow they daughter Betsy. Follow the stories. Her grandchildren tell it. She washed her hair in first rain. On Mama's side, when one of great-grandmama's Josephine, 16, died, I wanted to know, how do you make dead tongues speak? Initial offering, gratitude, make space for what you ask, not as stranger, as kin. And when you ask, be bound by blood. And as for the talk part, the speak, notice the way sentient cinerariums carry the bones, the way they buzz between breath and letters, the bed of their humming. In that one story, Mama talked about the water breaking. She walked opposite of the hospital the night I came. Those bones, they started to chant in that other story. The story where they said, this next poem, it's interesting because I often think about memory and when something or someone was a part of your childhood, then you discover something about them. And it's like, well, how do I go back and undo how they became stitched within, right? And in some cases, you're like, I don't know what to do with the hell of that. I think that wallpaper is just going to have to stay there and keep looking at how complex it is. So, speaking of, this poem is called, does anyone have any water by mistake? That's not the name of the poem. Does anyone have any water? I need some water. Oh, thank you. Surviving R. Kelly and Michael Jackson when they are your childhood's soundtrack. 1. Sundays belonged to Mahalia, but Monday was Millie Jackson's day. By Friday, mamas didn't know it yet, losing one sense to gain another, the ability to insert themselves in between the breath and space of each lyric that left his lips. There was no doubt he was saying about them. He was saying to them. 2. He was saying to us, reminded us they didn't care about us. How could we question that? How could we break the big he became, giving original meaning to blurred lines we were never going to question? The same way we were never going to question this truth. We never stopped looking for how to get back. We figured if we can make mortals into heroes and heroes into gods, then there'd be no question. We were all in that image of holy, right? 3. We can't question the holy created by our own hand no more than we can question the magician who made age slip into numbers, slip in and out of mouths of grown women as their daughters went missing. Lyrics became the psalms repeated as we became accomplices to our bodies becoming ignitions, cars, jeeps, or an endless hotel. He birthed relationships into existence, spoke babies into being. How do we question he who made us sanctified on the dance floor? 4. On the dance floor is where I would try to shuffle right, shuffle left, buck my hips. If I buck my hips hard enough, I become him. The beat and his voice take me back to that world premiere. The way he reinvented the thing we can't name. How would we ever find anything vulgar in that? 5. Vulgar might not come close. It was proof turned pornography. Black girl interrupted. By viewing parties, by all the women who said they would have taken her place. How many different ways did we claim it wasn't him? 6. Did they do it? That's not really the question. How did the music make us feel? At our weddings, graduations, all those Saturday nights at the club. Didn't they remind us of flying with our feet on the ground? Did they do it? When our stories went missing, didn't we say they were the ones who handed them back to us? Where do I put my cassette tapes, the albums, Can we unpaint all the pain that's been on the walls in the rooms of our psyche? Can we remove all the wallpaper from our childhoods? Where's the sin in gods created and crafted by human hands? As gods go, they demand sacrifice. What does a sacrifice to a god look like? Our daughters, our sons, ourselves? Read a newish piece. I was teaching a workshop on the figure of the monster and the monster as the self, because it's like way too easy to look at monsters wall to wall and like horror, which I love, or literature. And it's way more difficult to look in a mirror and be like, where's my monster? And who is it? And what is it? And what does it look like? Fever dreams of a feral one. We knew night mapped towards a low longing hum and arrhythmia. Some say was what made the lips smack. Met 'em once in a gas station once. The sock hop white R&B, the kind of slow played the way in that one movie, the one with all the cat people. We danced offbeat. That voice made us end. The rubbing, the length and width of our trauma, self-soothing ended, made him stand stiff. He's not moved since. This same night I knew I had no babies to feed Saturn to soothe his hunger and anger. My barren womb, I undressed every night, let him take the flesh, raw. The most difficult parts that threatened to break his jaw. Saturn isn't the only one who eats bodies. Spent so much time in his belly, he taught me his way. Hot-tempered turned paternal, loverly. Honey, when you dine on bodies, seek a man's heart. Never his words, never his touch. Or else you'll starve. We knew the thinning hours of ambrosial hours we chased. It was when the wind was the fist knocking the door open, when ears heard engines carry quiet and empty, driverless. Within day being swallowed by asphyxiation, no shepherds here but farm folk. A man aiming an index target at sky explains the sun. See the pale pink, how it swallows the blue boy. It's an old one, they say. About the sun saying he'd exchange his whole self for a witness of her yawn. Son, pay attention. Only be that man to give that kind of life here A girl, African grandfather, and Jack Daniels are held between the index and thumb of thinning and ambrosial hours where she tells him, I'm going to die like this. Where he says, no, God doesn't work that way. You'll be able to make another and another and another trip. You'll die going to help children. His words wrap like the coat she wears, and Echo, being herself, vibrates in the bones of the girl. Die like this. Day heard the low hum felt in the bones, and arrhythmia. I corn mama myself leaving. Tendons, blood, my unsatisfaction left in streets, offices, sometimes apartments, sometimes bed sheets. They keep on toil. And like all good work, this work has a song. Days caught between Alice called, dig the dirt from Nels, bite 'em if we have to, spat out the chew of the tobacco. Nah, we don't spat. We swallow the bits of glass, the poison, all of it. We not your lusty things, we nobody's anything. We are the hungry, the never fully fed, the come here, closer. In known dusk, the howl opens to the deep red, the back of throat red, mouth broken wide till teeth are on flat plane, where tongue remains as wet as the engorged cunt, the one not contained in panties. She's the cave. Here I said, now I said, gonna swallow you, gulp you. Not said, promised. You've never known a missin' like this. No gimme said, no yank felt, you won't feel getting got. I'ma take as I've always, but baby, you'll be full. And Mama Nix's cervix, the drum spoke his voice, all things he hemmed in silence. What he finna do when I said, I want it like this. Once the howl was heard of self, of vestments no longer. Now be you an imagined thing, a figment of the untouchable thing. You be that very thing in a box. In this cave lit, where daylight can't touch, I am the horror, the hagged, the beauty. I've been had, I'm the never touched. No idea have you that your mouth can't hold me. I am the unseen obscene. In no night, I've killed the toil in my bones. Let him starve in that field. Corn mamas no more. I serve as I am served. I read his silences. He says his awakening, that utterance is his, is mine. In the dusk when the moon dares daylight, take holla out of your lungs. Focus on where you grew me. Gonna bring you to where red disappears, the way earth is swallowed by water. I won't swallow you, won't sacrifice my body to your own, won't need pieces of you gone missing. I'ma need all of you for what we finna. You've imagined none of this, child. My body in his hush, and the hum of his desire. Legs carry me to ambrosia, and the forever night tucked in my womb. My body broke day, the way my body won't succumb. The low longing hum, how it grows, how it takes his voice, how it makes him have to use his hands. I will wrap with a couple of short pieces out of Black Men at Work. This was inspired by, there is allegedly a cursed trunk in Kentucky, and I believe it's in the Kentucky Historical Society. I love all things very spooky, very unseen. If it's unseen and it's spooky and it's crazy, I'm there. And so, but this was a trunk. It was an enslaver ordered an enslaved man to build it for the birth of his child, didn't like it, beat him. I believe he lost his life over it. The enslaved man's name was Remus. So this inspired a poem. And I believe there's like a whole book about how that chest cursed the whole family and they tried to reverse the conjure. How to reverse the conjure for Remus. Owl's blood, too easy. Easy like the way you appeared and disappeared life. That kind of power always has balance. When you and yours want to be gods, know that even gods must observe the rules. No buried jars facing east, under no flowering tree, no owls killed by human hands. This kind of undoing requires and I'll end with a couple of others. Book 5. Rage is the justified anger of the righteous. Blood, it splatters into places unseen and upon hands that won't directly butcher. Dust knows nothing of settling. And the land? It hasn't stopped beating against itself to teach us how to listen. There's a section in this that not out yet. This is just my copy to mark up and keep correcting. There's a section in this in which different countries are talking to each other and in dialogue. So this is America to Europe. And I'll end with this one. I am, we gave you our rejects, only because you took. You eat our unwanted gods. You erased my age, my people. You be our dumping ground. Thank you.
Wow. So we are going to have just a quick Q&A for Stephen and Shanta. If you all have questions that you'd like to pose to either of our writers. In the back.
Both of them. I want to know, what was it initially? Because you were 4 years old, 20, or 11. You said that you had, I want to be a poet, and you pursued it for the rest of your life. What was it?
You guys want to come up and answer these questions?
I think, I've always been taken in by images and images and everything. So, it's just working across mediums. I think there is something that they got inside of me. It's funny because I came to writing as a punishment. It was one of the many punishments, but that scene, Bart Simpson's writing, that was me assigned on line paper, and then a 6th grade teacher who'd make us copy out dictionary pages. So, but then somehow my first language actually was just writing in a journal and talking to myself because I wasn't allowed to I didn't really have a voice in my home. So my journals, the age of 12-ish. And then I never saw myself really as a writer yet. And poetry is my other early language too. Thank you for that question.
So I was in 6th grade when I first saw, it was a documentary about Stanley Kunitz, who was a poet who was born in 1905, died in 2006. So he was 100 years old, didn't quite make it to his 101st birthday. But I had he read a poem called The Round, that just got under my skin. I'd never heard anything like it before. And I was just like, what even is this, And so I actually got a videotape of him reading it, and I played it over and over, memorized it, spoke it out loud with his cadence and intonation, just feeling it, like it became part of my musculature, And so I think it was the sounds of the words. He himself, when he was 8 years old, he was living in Massachusetts, and he would go through his mother's dictionary and find really cool words. And then he would go out into the woods behind his house and shout them just because he liked the sound of them. And I think that that's what sustains a lot of writers is the sound. One of his favorite words when he was 8 years old is phantasmagoria. And I just love the idea, right, of like an 8-year-old kid going out into the woods behind their house and just being like, phantasmagoria, you know what I mean? Just like belting it out just because he liked the sound of the words against the rocks and trees and just putting it out there. So that's my answer.
Thank you.
Yeah.